What can more girls and women do to compete in quizzes, whether it's a mastermind or a Kaun Banega Crorepati or any other kind of quiz?
More or less, I can say I read a book a day, 300 to 400 books a year, since I was 7 or 8.
Wow.
That's a lot of books.
We were waiting, the 4 finalists, just before we went onto the stage. I remember the other 3 contestants, who were all male, and one of them said, "May the best man win." And I said, I'm here too.
I've done some crazy things in my life, and those things have actually helped me to acquire all kinds of knowledge and information. When I was in my middle 20s, I backpacked my way across Europe. I slept on railway platforms, I slept on the decks of ships, I hitched rides, I did all kinds of things.
You were hitchhiking solo, that backpacking was solo with a group of people?
Solo.
Welcome to Quizzitok. Today we have an incredibly special episode and I couldn't be more excited to share it with you. If you're a fan of quizzing or believe in the power of knowledge to open doors and inspire, you're in for a treat. We're joined not by 1, not 2, but 3 champions of Mastermind India. Mastermind, as you know, is widely regarded as one of the toughest quizzes in the world. And here's what makes this session of Quizzitok even more special. All our 3 guests are remarkable women who've paved the way in what has traditionally been a male-dominated field of quizzing. Out of 5 Mastermind series held in India, 3 were won by these champions who broke the mold and proved that the pursuit of knowledge is limitless. We'll be meeting 3 Mastermind champs in turn and also together. Archana Garodia Gupta, path-breaking businesswoman and author. Priyamvada K.E, acclaimed editor and children's book writer. And Dayita Datta, an award-winning lifelong educator, now shaping young minds at a public school in Assam. These 3 remarkable women, champions of one of the world's toughest quizzes, broke barriers in a male-dominated field with their intellect, curiosity, and drive to inspire the next generation. First up is Archana Garodia Gupta, who's been a trailblazer in the world of quizzing, literature, and business. She's been a Mastermind India champion in the year 2001 and a champion of champions when there was an exhibition match, as it were, before the 5th season, where all the previous 4 champions played off at the Baha'i Temple here in Delhi, and Archana is the one who won. She's also an entrepreneur, which we'll find out more about as we go on, an author, written a number of books on children's history particularly, and a former president of the FICCI Ladies Organization, FLO, I believe it's called. Archana, it's wonderful to have you on Quizzitok. Tell me, what does it take to become a champion quizzer, and even more, a champion of champion quizzers?
I think, first of all, curiosity, where you want to know about whatever you see. The second, I would think, is that an opportunity, an environment which is nurturing, which allows you the space to do these things. And the third is, I think, just stepping up and putting yourself, put yourself in a position on the stage where you can be very ridiculous, but you don't have to mind that.
3 vastly different subjects and quite challenging subject, the Golden Fleece, Jinnah and the Formation of Pakistan, and then the novels of K.M. Munshi, which is, quite a body of work. How do you firstly master each individual subject? How did you do that? And then for you, you had this attribute of quick recollection when you needed to. How did you prep for both?
For the subjects, of course, I read the main literature on it. And then I read around it. I saw movies. I even read things like the biography of K.M. Munshi. Just, I always believe that even in school, when you're studying for a topic, it's important to do peripheral reading around it, because that really brings everything into focus and it especially helps with remembering things. So this is one thing. And regarding recall, now for quizzing, I think when you see that what is it that makes a good quizzer, the first thing, of course, is exposure. So you read, you watch movies, you travel, you see things. The second part is storage, where you save it. A lot of people see things, but it doesn't, it's not stored.
Okay.
It's not stored.
Yeah.
And the third part is retrieval, when you need to retrieve it.
Yeah.
So I think the first part is something we can do something about. We can make sure we get enough exposure.
Yeah.
The retrieval and the storage. For storage, I think it's important not just to see it as, if you're reading something, it's not just lines. You have to visualize, you have to imagine the thing. And those things get stored much better.
Yeah.
If you can see some, and as I said, peripheral reading around it. So if you see a movie, you've read a book about somebody, you see a movie, you see a clip, you remember it then. The third part of retrieval is something I think it comes with practice. Because
The more you do it,
the more
the
you
better you get at it. And practice is very, very important,
I think one attribute that in my life which has helped me, which I think came about because I started quizzing in school itself, is that I've become reasonably good at making educated guesses.
Which is a very important part of, in quizzing, of course, but in life
In
generally.
life. So that's a life skill which I think I've got out of quizzing, just making educated guesses.
Any high point you remember from the winning moment?
Yeah, well, one high point was that after I finished, there's a bunch of school kids came up and started taking autographs, and those were the first autographs I gave.
Wow. You talked of your childhood. Let's go there. Let's go through a little bit of a picture album at different stages, okay? So that's Archana is a little girl. Where was that?
So, Calcutta. I think the one, I was born in Calcutta and was there till I was 5. So, that's in our house in Taliganj in Calcutta.
All right.
That car was the delight of my life. So, you can see that.
And which schools were you at?
I was in Modern High School in Calcutta, and
All right.
before that in Bal Nilay, it was run by Manu Bhandari, who's a famous author.
Yeah, right. Or
so-
novelist, yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So my family was very literary in that sense. My father particularly believed in good literature.
Do we have a picture of that? This was
This was modern school at Delhi.
in Delhi. And this is
A school
later
visit
meeting.
to Safdarjung.
And you said you started quizzing at that level itself.
My quizzing actually started a little later in school. Modern school did not have that much quizzing. So I used to take part in recitation and, storytelling.
Sure.
But quizzing I really started by class 9.
That's all right. What about at home? Do you have any pictures of the family, of the parents, for instance?
This is my parents.
These are your parents?
Yes.
And this is obviously when they got married.
Yes.
You weren't around at this time.
No.
Tell me about them and the kind of influence each or both together had with them and the kind of home that you had.
So we are from a reasonably traditional Marwari family of Calcutta.
All right.
And my father was an exception for his thing. He was a gold medalist. He did his master's in engineering in Calcutta. And then he was a very wide, broad reader, and he educated himself. He was part of the film society, so international films, classical music. So these were things which were not there in
But it was
the
in
family.
home around you, and that made a difference.
So because he did that, and when we were growing up, he would make it a point to take us to see programs. We didn't have this concept, this is not for children. So, for example, I saw Tughlaq at the age of 8, which is, I don't know how much I understood.
At
but,
Purana Killa.
the
One where
at Purana.
Qazi Saab
Yes.
produced with
So,
National School of
my
Drama.
father was a great follower of theatre. So, I think I have seen all National School of Drama plays from maybe 76, 77 to the 90s, even the student production.
So the home influence was
So the
important.
home, and we had hundreds of books at home. A birthday present was always a book. We learned classical music, we learned classical dance, we listened to Western classical, we listened to jazz, we would go for concerts. So there was a huge cultural input, and it was considered important and valuable.
And your mother encouraged you to?
And my mother, though she did not finish her graduation, she was a very exceptional woman that she really believed, one, that you could do anything if you put your minds to it. Whatever you wanted to do, you could do and you could achieve. The second is she did not believe in roles for us. So normally when women are brought up there is a certain image that the parents have that the girl should look like this. These are womanly pastimes. This is what she should be doing with her time. So long as we were, we did reasonably well in school and we were well behaved, um, the rest of the time was ours. So each one of us developed
You
our.
have a sister
own-
too.
We are 5 sisters.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I said one because I know you've co-authored some books
Yes,
with one of the sisters. That's why. Okay, so you were talking about your sisters and yeah, carry on.
So we all of us developed our own hobbies, pastimes, passions, whatever. And that was something wonderful because I think we were not being held up to some ideal model and found wanting. It created a lot of confidence in all of us.
Obviously, the home influence has a lot to do with that and your exposure. Actually, you bucked the trend in the sense of, as we discovered, I've been doing public quizzing for 40 years, in whether on television or off it or whatever it is. And you don't have as many girls, at least quizzing, despite their interest. So if that curiosity is fed, if they're encouraged to expand their awareness beyond traditional textbooks and only the classrooms, then it's something that anybody, regardless of gender, can grow into and master, as you did. And then you got into this whole area of quizzing at school itself. And how well did you do over there?
In school, I start by class 11th. I mean, I was, of course, part of the school team. So by class 10th, 11th, 12th, I was representing the school and we won some quizzes, not all.
This from modern school, was it?
This from modern school first.
All right. And then when you went to college at?
Lady Shri Ram College,
As
LSR.
you reminded me later that one of the first television quizzes, if not the first, was Quiz Time in 1985.
Yes, and I was
which
there.
The first one I hosted
I remember you very well
from that time.
from that time. I
when I
remember
had
the
hair
show.
on my head.
Yes,
That's right. So you came from LSR.
I came from
And
it.
how did you do in that round? Do you remember?
Yeah, we got knocked out quite sadly.
You know, that was, we only had 18 questions in that sort of, less than half an hour kind of format. We had some fantastic teams.
Yes.
And people who've then gone on in life to do interesting things like yourself. Sort of, that one of the features, and that was the very first quiz time, even subsequently. So
I was there in 1988 as well from IIM Ahmedabad twice.
so then you went to IIM Ahmedabad and you studied there and you came from the, look at that. You have to excuse my senior moments because I don't have a vivid memory of each and every team that came. And I remember you from Mastermind, of course, which was in 2001, which was much later. And how did you do as the IIM Ahmedabad
Got
team?
knocked out first round. I still meet the people who, so for example, the team that beat us was Stevens in 1985. And my teammate got married to one of the Stevens team.
Oh, so that's one of the quiz time shadis I don't know about. I know about one of the winners, Kaushik Chatterjee, who then who was from AFMC. And then he married one of the students who was also from one of the Bombay colleges, Suchishri. So that one I knew about. I didn't know about this.
Subir Sinha and Rashmi Verma.
Okay, and so they married. So there you are. So that can happen. We were just talking the other day about another pair from quizzing. One was Nilekani and Rohini Nilekani. They met at a quiz competition where they were both competing. That's how they met, and he's spoken about it and written about it in the past too. So interesting things can happen in the quiz arena, including matchmaking and shadis. So then you were at IIM Ahmedabad, and you got into management because of an interest in entrepreneurship, or you had a business. You have it in your genes, certainly.
I think it's part of it is that. It's something which you just expected to do in the kind of background I come from. Everybody's in business and that's what you're supposed to do. The second part is I think I have a bad case of neophilia, which means love of new things.
Okay.
So whatever businesses I've set up have tended to be things that no one else is doing. Whether it's wise or not wise, that remains to be seen. But it's
what are some of the things? Because what are you doing now, and what are some of the businesses you attempted before that?
So straight out of IIM, I joined the family business where we used to make yarn. We had a spinning unit and we made yarn. And obviously, I wanted to go abroad and meet interesting people and make interesting yarn. So we were the first to develop a particular kind of yarn which nobody in India was doing, and just a couple of people across the world. And I remember taking the samples and going off with my bag to Europe. And a lot of the people in the early 90s, just before liberalization and after liberalization, 91 and all, a lot of the people, it was the first time they were talking to some Indian business person. So that was very exciting because, and I would
Novelty, neophilia. as you
give
said.
interesting names like Egyptus and things like that from my, fancy names to all the yarns from my reading and all of that. Currently, since the last 20, 30 years, we are manufacturing imitation jewelry and exporting it. We were the first brand in India. So in the mid 90s, when we saw that in India everybody wore only precious jewelry and you didn't have a concept, and if you looked at the worldwide market, it was mostly costume jewelry. So we thought that this is an opportunity. So it was a gamble because that's your livelihood at the end of the day. But it was great fun, and we looked up museum pieces, and you can experiment, right, with costume jewelry, which you can't afford diamonds and gold to take
That's
out
right.
crazy designs.
Yes, that's right.
So we did that. Then we were the
Is
first
that one
brand.
of yours? The one you're wearing?
Well, yes, the brand is Touchstone.
Oh.
And after that, we were running retail stores and shop in shops in with so many department stores. And now we are more or less digital first. So we are selling online on platforms like Amazon and by ourselves. And our products go to 140 countries.
One more thing that I really want to talk to you about before we talk about some things altogether is about your various books that you've written. Tell me how that's happened and how that's been received, and that particular effort in writing books in children's history, and one even just on women rulers in India, right? How did that come about, and what has that engagement been like, and what has been the reception been like?
So, given the fact that, I read so much, I think more or less I can say I read a book a day, 3 to 400 books a year. I mean, that's more or less since I was 7 or 8.
Wow.
That's a lot of books.
Yes. Yes.
I should have probably come to writing earlier. I mean, I did things like I was editor of school magazine and things
Right.
like that. But I always wanted to write. And then I got an opportunity when Hachette commissioned me to write a history of India for children. But I was talking to them, exploring an idea for writing a time travel series, which then I finally got to write. And they said, but we would like you to do this. And I took that up. I loved researching, So I think the fun part of it for me was reading to find, facticals, as you call it, or little fun facts. And I may have read 500-600 books to write that 2-volume history of India for children. I co-wrote with my youngest sister, Shruti, who is 16 years younger than me. And she's a brilliant writer. So we are like a complementary team. I do a lot of the research. She does a lot of the writing and phrasing. But of course, we can do things independently. So that I thought it would take me 1.5 years because I was doing this along with my business and my flow work.
Yeah.
But
At Fiki Ladies Organization, all right?
it took 6 years. Every weekend, missing out on family holidays. I think it was like a kind of a junoon.
Despite whatever you already knew about it, obviously you had a lot of learning to do to put them out.
Yes.
And that was important.
As part of it, I've given hundreds of school talks, which I really enjoy interacting with the children.
Again, so that's what I want to come to. How do you engage? Because for children, it's all about engagement, making it interesting, entertaining, rewarding to know about. That's one of the things we try to do with quizzing because it's interactive. We encourage that, how to do it and how to find out about things. Even a curricular subject too can we make very fascinating.
Yes.
And, and make people want to know more. Not just that's something that's plonked out to them, they have to do a class exercise. It's something that they can find out about.
So I think my quizzing experience has really come to the fore because I think one of the things about quizzing is you're sort of, what would I say, a picker up of unconsidered trifles. So we do that. little nuggets, so to say. And the whole tone of the book, if you read it, is a lot of fun.
Okay.
So that is there. And when I conduct sessions for children, I think I continuously ask them questions. So it's my quizzing. It's not just that I'm speaking and they're listening, but they're continuously engaged, maybe 50 questions in the course of a hour or something. So they're fully engaged.
You've done, I don't know if you have a count of how many times you've been an expert on KBC, which is, in one sense, the other end of the spectrum of Mastermind. It's for everybody. And it's what would be described as a Janta quiz.
When you're saying a count, I think I'd once done it. It's about 50 plus episodes,
Wow.
which is quite a bit. My appearance is only for a minute or so in each episode, a minute and a half. But it has gained me a lot of recognition and across the world. It's quite
Across the world.
across the world. I mean, even, I was in Sydney and some Indian came up to me, asked for a selfie. So I get a lot of that request. I was in Cape Cod on a beach and I, not looking like I look on the show because I was all tangled and,
Yeah, right.
but
Ready to go into the water.
ready to go into the no, just out of the water with salt.
In the
Every-
yeah, okay.
And there's an Indian family and they came on the beach and they just came up straight to me and they said, "Oh, we just saw your episode yesterday."
So they should get points for getting a quiz question right. They recognized you.
Yes.
Even
yes,
out
yes.
of your traditional look and sort of.
In a mask during COVID times, at a doctor's reception, somebody came and said, "Are you?" I said, "How did you recognize me?" He said, "Aapki aankhon se." I said, "Where?"
Yeah, and one of the reasons, of course, is your facility, your bilingual facility. You can express yourself in Hindi, you can express yourself in English, and you put it like that. And Mr. B has always been very appreciative of your inputs and your little nuggets and all that kind of
It's
thing.
very kind of him. I speak quite a few languages, Bengali, because it's a childhood language for me.
All right.
And I learned French, I've learned German, I speak Marwari, I'm reasonably okay with Sanskrit.
Wow.
So, quite a few.
Yeah, quite a sort of, polymath in that sense, in terms of your interests and in terms of your scholastic abilities, certainly. So all of that is there. We'll extend this Quizzitok discussion to our next guest. We've got 2 more guests to come, and we'll talk about a few things together. One of the things I want to talk about is how do we get more girls interested in quizzing? Interested in general knowledge to begin with, and you don't have to be a competitor or a competitive person to, want to know more and want to find out more and know how to find out more. So we'll move on to our next guest. Great chatting with you, and we'll continue this discussion. On to the next guest. This session of Quizzitok has 3 Mastermind India champions. In season 3, the second woman to become a champion on the show is with us here, Priyamvada K.E. Welcome to this session of Quizzitok.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And so lovely to see Archana, who's an old friend, my senior from college, whom I met after Mastermind.
From Lady Shriram College.
Yes.
Again, wow.
We've traveled together also.
Conducted quizzes in Dubai.
This is after Mastermind?
After Mastermind.
Having met, wow, things happen on Mastermind. You're also a distinguished editor and an author and a quizmaster. You just heard how Archana and she have both traveled all over and conducted quizzes, including to Dubai. And so, good to have you with us today. One of the things we're talking about is what made you think, champion enough to win a title like Mastermind? And also, what can more girls and women do to grow their general knowledge, to compete in quizzes, whether it's a Mastermind or a Kaun Banega Crorepati or any other kind of quiz of that kind? That's our subject. But let's go to KBC. You've also been an expert, and that's where we left off with Archana. You watched the show. You've been there as a Triguni. You've been there where somebody won 7 crores. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, very well. I had the privilege of being on a panel with Vikram Joshi, who was world quizzing champion, and Rajiv Makhni, the tech guru. And there were 2 brothers.
Narula brothers.
Yes, the Narula brothers.
And you were sitting among the audience.
We were live on the show. So, when a question came to us, we had to answer it right there. So, it was the second last question, worth 3 crores. And they came to us for the answer, and I gave them the answer.
Do you remember the question?
There were 4 Nobel laureates mentioned, and it said, who among these has not won the Nobel Prize twice? That was the question.
I remember that was one of your mastermind subjects too. Women Nobel laureates.
Yes.
Were these all women?
No. The KBC question were all male
Okay.
Nobel laureates. The Mastermind Finals subject choice happened because it was being filmed around December, and they had just announced the Nobel Prizes that year. And that year, no woman had won. So I remember thinking, how many women have won the prize? And it was something I didn't know. So I thought, let me look this up. It's an interesting subject to research on. And that's how that subject came about.
What were your subjects in Mastermind, Priyamvada?
Oh, I was very young when I took part in Mastermind. Just finished my MPhil, in fact. So I remember thinking, because I had seen the previous 2 series, there were more senior contestants. So I thought, okay, now that I've qualified, when I got the call, I have no chance of winning. So let me at least study something or research something which will give me some knowledge that I'm interested in. So then even if I lose, it's not a loss. It's still a win. I take away something from this. And because it was Mastermind India and I had an interest in art, I thought, let me do the life and work of a famous painter. And I had an interest in Western art. And again, like Archana, we have a huge book collection at home and access to libraries. But then I thought, let me choose the life and work of Raja Ravi Verma, who's a painter
Also from
Kerala.
Kerala, where you are. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Yes, and a seminal painter who's influenced virtually how this country views its gods and goddesses and how they visualize them, because very different from temple architecture and everything else. Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So that was my first subject choice, the life and work of Raja Ravi Verma. For the semi-final, I chose the life and work of Dr. Salim Ali, the ornithologist, because I was very fortunate to grow up in the northeast of India, and this is pre-television and pre the internet. So bird watching was one of our hobbies. And so Dr. Salim Ali is someone who I admire immensely, and I thought,
If I remember right, and you jog my memory when we were discussing this, that round was recorded at the Forest Research Institute of India in Dehradun, coincidentally.
yes, where Dr. Ali had also visited on work. So it was such a pleasure to be in that beautiful setting for that round.
And of course, you've explained how you picked your last subject, which is Nobel laureates, women Nobel laureates, and that was at the Jodhpur Palace.
Yes.
That's right. Do you remember what it felt like? You said you were competing against seniors and all the rest of it. What it felt like to win or to be in that chair? What do you think it takes to have your mastery over a subject and mastery over general knowledge? Because Mastermind goes in 2 sections.
Yes.
What did it take to do that and to be able to get the answers? From what I recall, your score, the final was phenomenal 43, which is the highest in all of the scores. And that's just to be able to get it bang, 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 bang. What did it take to do that?
I think the third element required is to be very calm when you're on that black chair. Because if you get flustered and you lose your concentration or your focus, then that's the end of it.
Absolutely. You have to look at the next ball. You can't look back, And I remember Ajit Shenoy, our mutual friend, who we lost very recently, very sadly, who was, my God, he had a brain like a few others, and he knew about so many things. He wasn't the very first mastermind,
Yes.
but he missed out on one of the first few questions, and then he just threw in the towel. He didn't want to do anything more to do with it, said, okay, what's the point of it? But I explained to him later, it's like Sachin saying, I've missed a ball, I'm not going to play for my century or for the rest of the innings. You can't do that. You have to look at the next rapid fire, something that you have to do.
Yes, you can't give up.
So staying calm
Yes.
and staying positive, I think.
I remember when I was sitting, waiting for my turn to go on for the second round, I took my pulse and it was 140.
Wow.
And then I started reciting this to myself, from the Gita. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva. Which is sukh और दुख को एक करके, लाभ और हानि को एक करके, then go and fight. Be indifferent to sukh and dukh and winning and losing.
Which is a great attitude.
But I remember saying that to myself before going on. That
Words have magic, words have power.
Absolutely. And they do that. And that's the part of mantras generally, I believe. In talking of heartbeats, we once did a season of a show on a channel which was then called Star One. It was called Heartbeat, and people were sequestered in a room. We had cameras all around. They could relax. They could do what they want. They could use the phone. They could fax. They could use the internet. And there were questions and propositions were put to them. Say 10 choices. They had to pick the right ones out of that. And you didn't have a timer. Your heartbeats were allotted to you.
Goodness.
So you could hear your heartbeat in the room, and you could hear it pounding or whatever it is. So the thing was to stay calm. And you could take help. You could chillax in between. You could have a drink. You could do whatever you want. But you just had, and Vinod Kambli was one of the first guests. And he really wanted to win because he was in dire straits at that particular time. And he came on, a sportsman like him, who's faced, a battery of the world's fastest bowlers coming at him. He came on with a starting heartbeat, pulse rate, like you said, of 150, 160. I thought, my God, we always have a doctor on. We said कि इसको रोक दे. He said, नहीं, मैं खेलूंगा. मैं ऐसा ही खेलता हूँ. मैं इस तरह से खेलूंगा. It was a little staying calm. So that's a very important virtue.
And I just want to share one recollection about going on to the final as well. We were waiting, the 4 finalists, just before we went on to the stage. And I remember the other 3 contestants, who were all male, they were wishing each other well. And one of them said, "May the best man win." And I said, I'm here too. I didn't say that. I said, "May the best person win." And then said, "Oh yeah, person."
Here I'd like to remind you, Triguni on KBC.
Yes.
Everywhere else it is called Three Wise Men.
That's right.
And I remember when this is something that India did.
The
Where they
pitch.
renamed it.
Yeah.
Because you had so many women on the panel.
Yes.
That's right. And because I thought it was a nice name.
Yes.
And that's what we thought of it in that way. Apart from when we're talking of quizzing, I want to know, where did this interest in general reading and quizzing in turn, the quizzing follows from a certain interest in all kinds of things, a very Catholic interest, as it were. Where did that come from? That came from home.
Yes.
We have some pictures from there we'd like to share. There's you with the Mastermind bowl, looking impossibly young. How old were you at that time?
55.
You were 25. You look 15. Archana, don't you think? He looks impossibly young.
Jan's 15 now.
And with your mother and the gentleman with an absolute impressive handlebar over there. And was your dad? He was in the...
My father was a police officer of the 1965 batch.
Okay.
And he retired as Director General of the Border Security Force. He was DG BSF.
Oh, wow. So he was handling the BSF all over the country, wherever there are borders, in fact, and that kind of thing. There he was. And that's him meeting the president and prime minister
At that time.
at
Yes.
a particular point of time. Him, your mother, did they have a lot of interests at home? Did that how was it birthed, that interest in books and various subjects? Archana was telling us about the kind of, atmosphere at home,
Yeah.
and which is so important to encourage this sort of, wide-ranging interest. For you, what was it like?
Again, I will credit my parents for creating a home full of books and music and warmth and laughter. And some of my earliest memories are of my mother reading aloud to us.
Wow.
I spent my early years in Shillong, and Shillong had a wonderful public library at that time. So I remember sitting there, and she'd be reading to us and to other children around us as well. And so again, that encouragement of books, reading came to us from the family, from the home. As I mentioned, we were in the Northeast, and this is, many years ago now. So you would have a power cut in the evening, and we would play games amongst ourselves, countries and capitals, presidents of countries, things like that. So that interest in quizzing and learning and knowledge also came through from those early childhood games, I think.
Oh, absolutely. You had any siblings?
I had an elder brother. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us.
What happened?
My brother was an officer in the Indian Army. He was an aviator. He was a helicopter pilot. His co-pilot, passed away on a mission while they were rescuing an injured soldier in Ladakh in the year 2008. It was a huge tragedy, but my brother received the Sena Medal for gallantry, and his name is on the War Memorial near India Gate.
right in front of India Gate, as a matter of fact. And in the family, when you used to play, he too used to play?
Well, my brother was actually the quizzer. I was more into reading and books, elocution, poetry, creative writing. My brother also had an encyclopedic memory, and his interests were more military history related. So I've got a lot of information on guns and tanks and planes, which I don't know what to do with. But they've come useful later in life as an editor when I've edited books on strategy and military history and weaponry as well.
I think you were an editor even when you came into Mastermind.
I
It just
was,
had
that's
begun, and that's something that you continued with later in what you did, which is what I want to come to. You've had a reasonably long innings now of what, 20, 25 years?
24 years.
24 years as an editor. Tell us about the highlights of that.
Well, I had just started work when I participated on Mastermind. It was my first job, and it was in that first 6 months that this happened. I will credit the job as well to some extent because I was working for Encyclopedia Britannica, which is one of the world's leading encyclopedias at that time, certainly. And of course, people say that, oh, you were at Britannica, so you won. But then I say there were about 150 people at Britannica. So, but the fact that one was in an environment where one was researching and writing definitely helped as well.
So you were at Encyclopedia Britannica. You've been at a number of other publishing houses. You were last, I know, at Neogi.
Shortly, 6 months ago. Presently, I'm deputy editor at the India International Center in New Delhi.
Okay, so that's quite a ride of doing different things.
Yeah.
In all of that time, like a number of people in publishing and a number of people who haven't done it, but what you did do is bring out a number of books.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about them. Highlights.
Count of the number of books I've edited and worked on, and also trained.
I'm talking about the ones you wrote too.
Oh, the ones I've written. There are 5 of them. The first one is Animal Antics,
Wow.
and it combines fun, literature, poetry, and quizzing, because every chapter ends with a quiz question.
Okay.
And it's a fun book of scientific facts. So it's written in rhyming verse. There's a poem on an animal or bird from A to Z.
Okay.
And a child who reads it or a parent who reads it aloud to them will unconsciously learn about 10 facts about where it lives, what it eats, how it behaves, what it looks
Wonderful.
like. So it's highly recommended for all young readers.
Okay.
People of all ages.
Mark that, everybody. Mark that. So all of the books that Archana has written, do take a look, and the ones that Priyamvada has done.
And this is the last book I wrote. Animal Antics also has a sequel, More Animal Antics.
Okay.
This is the last. This was written during COVID. And I have
0 to 10 are all my friends.
So this was written for my young nieces who were learning how to count at the time. And the idea is to make numbers friendly and not scary, because basic numeracy starts with learning to count from 0 to 10. So it's again in rhyme, and it's also a song. And there's a free video online on YouTube. So you can find it if you just search for 0 to 10 are all my friends.
So you enjoyed writing them.
I've had great fun writing them. And
More in the pipeline.
Oh, definitely. When work permits.
We're going to be talking to all 3 women masterminds about how young people, their teachers and others can feed curiosity, can encourage a certain skeptical attitude to question things around them, not only to be curious, but to be able to discriminate, but also to find out from all of them, what do they think about the relevance of general knowledge in this age where you can do a Google search, where you have AI. What's the point of all of that? We'll come to that later, but I want to move. This is in Delhi, so we are going to virtually connect with our 3rd mastermind guest, who was the first ever to win the championship on the very first series. Our next guest is nothing short of a legend in quizzing and education. Dayita Datta, the first ever Mastermind India champion in 1998, is a name that resonates with excellence and a commitment to teaching as a lifelong vocation, stretching close to almost 50 years now. That's right. Almost half a century. Her journey spanning quizzing stardom to shaping young minds is truly remarkable. As vice principal at Welham Girls' School, she was a favorite teacher to many, and now at the Assam Valley School, she continues to teach and inspire. Her dedication and commitment have won her the National Award for Teachers in 2003. And today, joining us virtually from her school in the tea country close to Tezpur in Assam is none other than Dayita Datta. Hi, Dayita. Good to have you with us.
Hi, nice to see you, and particularly good to see the two of you. It was really nice meeting you, and I think Priyamvada and I had gone to Dubai together to do one quiz. If I
It's a
remember
wonderful
rightly.
memory, ma'am. Such a pleasure to see you again.
You both look gorgeous. Here am I in my school dress, rushed home after lunch duties, which are part of our duties in a boarding school.
But what counts is that you're with us, and that's more important than anything else. And from Assam Valley, thank you for taking time out. I've never been to your school, but you did an innings of what, some 29 years or something like that at Willems?
I did 10 years at La Martiniere for girls in Calcutta, 30 years at Wellham, and I retired as vice principal. And I've now been for almost 7 years at the Assam Valley School.
If my arithmetic is right, that makes it what?
47.
47 years, Doita,
That
as a
looks like
teacher. So you're going to be able to add value to this particular discussion, having taught
I
and
don't
having, different generation of students of what it is. But we'll begin, in a sense, with the quiz speak. For us, at least, when you won Mastermind, what was that experience like for you?
You probably know, I don't know if you know, but I nearly didn't take part in Mastermind.
No, I don't know about that.
No, because the day you had the qualifying round, I was actually going abroad. And I actually asked if the questions could be faxed to me. And at that time, I think, I can't remember who it was. I think it was
This is for
Troy.
the selection test, you meant?
Yes.
Okay.
And those days we had those things called faxes, right? So he said that if you fax the answers back within X number of minutes, we'll take you on. So at that time, my husband was working for the Telegraph in Calcutta. So I went to his office and the questions were faxed to me. And when I looked at them, I said, whoever has set the questions is aware of the Calcutta standard of quizzing. Because as you know, in the 70s and 80s, Calcutta really was the home of
Umphalas, the center of
quizzing.
quizzing, and the
Yeah,
public quizzing
yeah,
began
right.
in Kolkata.
So whoever set those, I said, has set the Calcutta standard. So I kind of wrote my answers and sent them off. And later I came to know from you that I had actually scored the second highest. Right?
That's right, absolutely. And also that's how it began. It's interestingly, talking of Kolkata and how you were there, and it was there was very active culture of quizzing in that city. It began in the 60s, I think. You were probably active in the 70s, or you tell me when
70s
it
and
was.
80s. 70s and
There you are, and there was you were part of a team with some, again, legendary quizzers.
Yes, absolutely. We were a very strange group, but somehow we managed to do very well. At that time,
Tell us about
really,
that particular team.
the team was basically, I began with college quizzing and so on. And then I went into the open circuit. And on the open circuit, we were four very interesting people. There was Mrs. Saranya Jayakumar, who also took part in Mastermind. She was more on the literary, traditional side. I was on the more history, current affairs. Kabir Sen was science, technology, jazz music. And Partha Basu would come out with these odd ones which nobody else knew. You know, he may be.
Parto also took part in Mastermind. He was sporting enough to come onto it.
Part in the same. I was very grateful
Season.
to him because he took part in the same semi-final as I did, and he in fact coached me for it.
What were your subjects? Do you remember? What were your subjects at the different stages?
My first subject in the qualifying round was the conquest of Everest from 1900 to 1990.
I remember that, and you were fantastic, phenomenal in that round. The semi-final?
The second one happened during my school exam, so I didn't have time to study too much. So I took Netaji Subhash Bose and the INA. And there I was very lucky because my friend Shugata Bose, the historian, who happens to be Netaji's great grandnephew, his father, Dr. Shishir Bose, had actually helped Netaji to escape. So I faxed him a series of questions. And I said, Dr. Daddy, please answer these questions for me. And he sent them back to me. So also I'm very grateful to him.
And in the
the third
finals, it
one,
was Gerald Darrell.
yes, the life and works of Gerald Darrell, who's a very favorite author of my family. But it also meant having to read his 23 books in 10 days while doing examination corrections. So it
Quite a
was,
challenge. Do you
yeah.
remember that winning moment? And I believe Shabana gave you the prize and
Yeah.
the congratulatory message.
And she was actually the chief guest at our school 2 weeks before that. So she kind of recognized me
Okay,
at that
fantastic,
time.
fantastic. So
But I
I'm
don't
going to
know
ask
if
you.
you're aware, but the runner-up, Debangshu Datta, is my cousin.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And we both, when we sat down, we both literally put our little fingers together. And we said, listen, family flag has to fly. Either you or me.
The first one was remarkable, and that was a little, in a sense of something to do with what quizzing was in Calcutta at one time. But all four of the finalists had a Kolkata connection.
Yeah, we were all Calcutta. In fact, for a while, Gautam Ghosh and I were on the same team.
Wow, there you are. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. I'm going to ask you a question which I asked both Archana as well as Priyamvada. What do you think made you and makes people a champion quizzer? And what are some of the attributes? And what should be the hallmark of prep for something like that?
I don't know because honestly, I just grew up with I'm one of three sisters and a much younger brother. And I had a father who frankly ignored the fact that we were girls. So he did not
Which is
like
wonderful.
conversation about silly girly topics and, meals and so on. We were expected to, join in interesting conversations and so on. And he's a great lover of history like me, although he was in the corporate world. And his idea of teenage reading for a girl was Rommel's desert campaigns or something. So I went to college with
We've had
this.
tanks, we've had all kinds of interesting stories. So here we are, desert campaign of Rommel in North Africa.
I didn't read many romances, but I had read Rommel's desert campaign or the Battle of El Alamein or something like that.
I think that's one thing that we're finding out in common. That it's the ambience and the atmosphere at home, and the culture of interests in reading, which has a lot to do with a wide range of subjects, a curiosity that is encouraged, and how to find out about things, and one thing leads to the other. So I think one can conclude that your interest in history as well as quizzing all sort of grew from that habit of reading and
Absolutely.
following up on that as well as sort of mastering it. You've been a teacher, a lifelong teacher, as we recognize, 47 years, my God. And at Wellams, which was but still is one of the foremost women's public schools in the country. And you had
So
a
they
long
say.
innings there, almost 30 years or so. I don't know for how many years you were the vice principal there.
20.
20. As a teacher there, right? And so many young girls. Why do you think more girls are not active in the field of quizzing? And what can be done to encourage that?
I think what happens is, and I can only speak from my own experience, is that girls get turned very inward during adolescence. And this is more so even in a boarding school, because a boarding school is a little world of its own. So the girls get very turned inward. So you need to have teachers and mentors who can open um, a wider range of experiences for girls. And I think that actually worked a lot in Welham and in La Martinia because I had very good girl quizzes. And that's partly because the teaching body, my colleagues, we had this kind of thing that we're going to expose the girls to a wider world beyond the classroom. And I think that is one problem with girls, is that they get turned very inward and not everybody tries to turn them outward.
What do you think, Archana? What are your views on this business of, in your case, I know what happened individually, but you had, your classmates, your peers. What can be done to encourage more girls to take an interest in things beyond them? Do you agree with Daita about this turning inward? And, what can happen to tell them that this is not just useful for exams? It can be very useful for exams too, but this is something that, you can cultivate and genuinely enjoy.
I think what happens is that there are many role expectations for girls in families, and they're supposed to spend their time in particular ways. And I also think that, for boys, when they come home and their work is done, their free time is theirs. But for girls, they have other obligations, their free time. And once you get older, your free time belongs to your family. So if you want to be a good quizzer, you have to spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day reading stuff, watching stuff, doing stuff which can be of no immediate use to you. Very few families give the leeway to their children to spend that kind of time doing, so that is one thing. I think both for the parents, it's important that they give that free time to the child to develop whatever passions. It may not be reading, it may not be for quizzing, but these are things which are sources of deep happiness in later life. So, they should be allowed to develop their passions. The second is that girls, even if they read, even if they're doing those things, they are a little hesitant. Here, I'd like to share, I read this book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In. They say,
Lean in.
Lean In.
Like this.
So, women, she has her, her premise is that women tend to lean back rather than lean into things. And I read that book at 50, and I read very extensively. So you tend to think, what is new? What am I going to see in this book? And when I read it, it was almost a life-changing book because I realized behavior patterns in myself, which I had not recognized before. And then this is something I always talk about. I said, go try, even if you don't know, you have to, first of all, get rid of the feeling of that you'll be ridiculous. That fear of failure has to go away because you go on stage, you are exposed. So once you get rid of that, if you can just say dust yourself off and carry on, you'll find to your surprise that you're performing much better than you ever thought. And in my life, it's true. In spite of all the encouragement we got from our parents, I never used to think I'm as good as so many other people until it was actually put to the test, and then you find that sometimes you are better and sometimes you're not.
Yeah, but it's worth getting
It's
your
worth,
inner.
if you don't mind looking ridiculous, you can do a lot of things in life.
Fantastic. Good advice. Priyamvada, would you like to weigh in on this?
Just to add to what ma'am and Archana had said, I think when you're going through adolescence, of course, it's tough for both boys and girls. But maybe girls are a little more hesitant to speak up. They wonder if people will listen to what they have to say. So there the environment matters in terms of encouraging them to speak up and voice their opinion. And also not to be afraid of failure, to go out and try. So I think that's something we need to encourage girls and young women to do, to not to be afraid of failure, to step up and to go out and try whatever it is that you want to do.
Daita, I'm going to come to you and ask you, in my case, for instance, though I've never been a quizzer, always a quiz master and communicator and all the rest of it, but my awareness of our world of history, geography, social studies, literature, science, all of that, there was some encyclopedias in our family library, which are very important. Was there some such in your case too?
Well, it was the Britannica, of course.
Right. In my case, it was an illustrated encyclopedia, which made it very interesting because of the books that we do for children now, we make sure it's very visual because, it's not just textual, but, so you make a sense of how things happen, how things work. So is that true of you too, of encyclopedic works?
My birthday present, 18th birthday present, which I could choose and I had a budget, was the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Wow.
So it still has pride of place, and we got a special cabinet made for it.
All 34 volumes?
Yes.
There should be a 17-volume one and a 34-volume
So I
one.
have the Macropedia and the Micropedia.
And what about you, Priyamvada?
Well, I grew up reading the children's Britannica, in fact.
Yeah, which is also very imaginatively put together.
Yeah.
And the connect with me is that Encyclopedia Britannica brought out our first general knowledge workbooks for schools, no for sure. And of course, that company has more recently been acquired by a company called Indianica. And our newest series, Knowledge Bee, is by the same company. So Encyclopedia Britannica is something that, and one of the things, our first book was called Know for Sure because it was carefully researched and veracity of information was very important. Which brings me to one of the last things that I want to discuss now that people keep asking, what's the point of general knowledge in the era of Google search and artificial intelligence? Why do you need general knowledge? And I'll start with you, Priyamvada. What do you think?
I think it's still immensely relevant. Of course, it helps to be able to look up an answer to any question, in just a second, should you need it. But having knowledge of your own within you that you can build the base of whatever it is, your career, the work that you do, and even in daily life is so essential. And so it's so important, I think, to maintain a reading habit and to build your own knowledge base and not just rely on something at the press of a button, which may not be accurate. It's so important to check the facts as well.
What do you think, Archana?
See, first of all, my reading and all is to give me pleasure. So that's the first thing. Whatever, I drink limca because I like it. And it gives, I would say, rus in your life. Whatever you look at, it's not just an object by itself, but it has a halo around it. There is a history. You look at something, you enjoy things a lot more in life. So that's the first and the primary reason why I do it. There's no great objective. But as a side thing, I think what Priyamvada said is that if you have knowledge within yourself and you're exposed to so many lives and so many stories, there is a certain kind of pattern recognition that sets in, and there's a certain kind of putting things into context which becomes easier because you're aware of seeing these patterns, a bit like Miss Marple in Agatha Christie. So these patterns help, they help in work life, they help in situations, they help in recognizing what you're seeing. And again, you are less susceptible to, as Priyamvada said, fake news. Because you have so many contexts that you become more skeptical, which is a very good thing. It's not a bad word. It's
No,
a
a
good
questioning
word.
attitude is
Yes.
very, very important. And questioning is what leads to any kind of knowledge. Whether it's in science, fundamental science, whether it's in finding out of anything, unless you have that questioning attitude, where is it going to take you? I think it's very important. So all this bombardment of information, you have to be able to question it and get to the right thing to the extent that you can.
Because you have been searching for knowledge and, whatever, if I see something, I'll immediately Google it because I want to know more, not for any other reason. Your skills at verifying information improve dramatically.
Your research skills,
Your
absolutely.
research skills
Cross-checking.
and a tendency to cross-check everything. You just cannot accept something if somebody says my name is such and such. You want to verify if that's true.
No, fact-checking has become a fact of life. Whether somebody's saying it in a public speech, nowadays people online instantaneously, in real time, fact-check it. And fact-checking is an important skill, I think, that people need to figure out. And, Dayita, to add to what they've said, I believe that foundational knowledge, of which general knowledge is a part, helps you navigate this absolute bewildering multi-galaxy world of information that is now surrounding everybody, especially young people. How do you talk to your students, your young students about this? What is your view on this?
Well, personally, I don't know my views, but I know that I say I have a junkyard memory. Helps me as a teacher because, sometimes in a boring topic, you talk out a little nugget of knowledge which, makes the students more interested, so to speak.
So it's helped
And,
you personally, as a teacher.
beg your
Okay.
pardon? Yeah,
It's helped you
it-
personally as a teacher.
yeah, as a teacher, it's helped me a lot because, I come out with all kinds of bits and pieces in my lessons, which, season maybe an otherwise.
I'd say that's part of what Archana said. There is a rust in information, in knowledge. there is a certain appreciation of, the joy of it. So I think that's terribly important. And however, I think that it's not just because you have to make it useful, but to appreciate it and really to be able to make connections, between things, to make educated guesses. It's very important to have an understanding of what things are, and
Yeah, I think also it's, as Archana said in the beginning, you need to have a curiosity about all kinds of things, you know. And if you have interesting experiences, I think that also helps out. I mean, I know my students think I'm a bit of an old fogey now, but I've done some crazy things in my life, and those things have actually helped me to acquire all kinds of, knowledge and information about various things.
want to name one crazy thing?
Oh, well, when I was in my middle 20s, which Indian girls didn't do, I backpacked my way across Europe, got strip searched as a drug smuggler in what is now Macedonia. I had to jump out of a moving car when I most unwisely hitchhiked and got into a little bit of.
You were hitchhiking solo? That backpacking was solo or with a group of people?
Solo. I did all kinds of things.
Oh, that is brave.
That's fantastic.
That's brave.
I slept on railway platforms. I slept on the decks of ships. I hitched rides. I did all kinds of things. And actually, because
So Dayita ma'am has had a very rich experience, and so that adds to her value as a
Yeah.
teacher. Fantastic.
so those things actually helped, right? Because I gathered quite a lot, and I'm also a dedicated museum and art gallery aficionado. So wherever I went, I've been to all the major art galleries and museums, and these things have actually helped me a lot. And as Archana said, you make all kinds of connections, right?
Between things.
I'll give you a very interesting one, which I made the other day, and the students asked. This young Italian called Yannick Sinner has won he's just coming up. So they asked me, the girls asked me, say, ma'am, he's Italian, but his name is his name is Yannick Sinha and he speaks German. So I said, don't you remember I taught you that northern Italy was part of Italia Irredenta? And that's where he comes from. I said, see, when you know history, when you have GK and curiosity, you make these connections.
Super. It's been terrific to have you with us, Dayita, to share your views. Quite an example you should set to all your students, particularly girls. One last message to girls about learning, about expanding the ambit of their interests.
That's what I said. I said it is up to us as teachers, girls, look outside, right? And we can only, as teachers, help them to look outside because society doesn't encourage it. So, girls, look outside beyond yourselves, right? Take the jump, read, travel, question.
I'm sure everybody listening will register that, whether they're girls or not, because whether you're a girl or not, these are things that matter. These are things of value. Archana, about women's empowerment and anything to say to particularly the girls listening in or watching, anything that you would like to add?
I'd like to say that follow your own passions. Don't be ruled by what people around you expect of you. Be
And fixed roles.
and fixed roles, and be brave. Don't fear failing publicly, and then you'll find you can do a lot of things which you thought were not possible.
Priyamvada.
Just to add to that, I agree with it all entirely, is I think develop your inner strength. And this also comes from reading and learning. Because when you are strong within, you can then step up into the world and say, this is who I am, I have something to say. So be strong inside and step forward.
Fantastic. So there we have it. We have a wrap on this episode of Quizzitok. Priyamvada, Archana, Dayita, thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of Quizzitok and sharing your thoughts. It's been an absolute pleasure having you all here today. Your stories, your insights, the experiences remind us of the power of curiosity and collaboration. Thank you for sharing your journeys with us. We hope our listeners feel inspired to explore, innovate, and make their mark. Join us again on another episode of Quizzitok.